Welcome everybody. We call it Huddle Up with Howard. It's been a while. Howard Richards is with us today. And Howard, we got a lot to talk about, but we'll start off on a little bit of a somber note. We lost Franco Harris recently. And for you and I, that was our era of watching some of the greats. And he was one of them on and off the field.
Yeah, Franco Harris, I think, is synonymous with the glory days of football, certainly with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I think it all started with his, famous catch, known as the immaculate reception. Bradshaw's getting pressured in the backfield, throws the ball, I think intended for Frenchie Fuqua. He's hit by Jack Tatum, and the ball goes bouncing back towards the Steelers to the line of scrimmage. And Franco Harris is about, 40 yards or so away, and the ball just drops right into his hands. He takes the ball down the sideline, for a game-winning touchdown against the Raiders. Ironically, and we don't know what the cause of death was with Franco. It really doesn't matter. But he was a true legend and a true ambassador for the sport of football. You never hear anything negative about him. Everyone that says something about Franco Harris says it with a smile and a light. And he's one of those guys, first of all, gone too soon at only 72 years old, but he'll sorely be missed. He was able to make it to the Hall of Fame. And he's just one of those guys that, when you think of the sport, I'm glad I played it because of guys like Franco.
One of the things about him, he was of that breed. He kind of resembled Jim Brown as far as him punishing guys, and he was criticized because he would go out of bounds when there was no more yards to be gained, and Jim Brown was critical of him because he would take on one more tackler. But you know what? He got the job done. There's a whole lot of guys that are glad that he didn't run over them because he certainly steamrolled enough guys. Because he was a legitimate 6'2", 230-pound running back. He's about almost the size of Jim Brown.
I bet he's bigger.
Yeah, but he was a really good pass receiver also. And for a very bland offense of the Pittsburgh Steelers, and most would tell you because the quarterback just couldn't grasp the offense. He had some good weapons, but Franco Harris kept every defense honest.
Yeah, he has. And he did it with grace and style, no trash talking. I think just the way you want to coach the game. Ironically, the Steelers were already planning to retire his number on Saturday, Christmas Eve. And in that era of great Pittsburgh Steelers defenses, he's the first offensive player to have his number retired. So I know that's going to be a very emotional day for Pittsburgh fans in Pittsburgh. Kind of wish I could be there, but I'll be south, a little south and west of
it. And a little warmer. And a little warmer.
I don't know how much warmer it's going to be. And it's single digits in Dallas on Friday, but nonetheless, Franco, he did it, his way, and I think the game of football is better. The world needs more Franco Harris.
Yeah. And you touched on something, what he meant not only to the game, but certainly the city of Pittsburgh off the field in retirement is something also that we shouldn't overlook. I mean, you said it earlier. He was an ambassador not only to the game, but to his community.
And you've been to Pittsburgh, so when you get off the plane and you're walking towards baggage claim and going out, you see that statue of him.
Mm-hmm.
And now I think that statue will mean more than ever to football fans, not just in Pittsburgh, but anyone who's a football fan and a fan of the NFL will see that statue of Franco and smile.
Let's switch and stay on the subject of the NFL. We're now starting to see teams get into playoff mode. And I always remind people, if you're a bettor, this is the most dangerous time of your betting season because every team thinks they have a shot. Every team is trying to play through an injury. And every team, some teams will take another team for granted because they look at the record. And the next thing you know, they're in overtime against that team. And I think it's the fun time of the year. But if you make a living on wagering on the NFL, man, you got to be on pins and needles right now.
Especially with, I believe there's more parity in this game. And teams probably that start slowly and are playing better now are really kicking themselves. Look at a team like the Detroit Lions. that started, I think, 1-6. Even a team like Jacksonville that started out horribly, but now they're playing better and like praying for someone else to give them a little help so that they can probably get in. And you want to peak. This is the time you want to peak. You want to be playing well. Unlike my Cowboys, who have kind of laid eggs 2 weeks in a row in games where, to me, even though they're in the playoffs technically, if you certainly they beat Houston the week before, but losing to Jacksonville on the road Sunday takes a little bit of that meaning away from this game against the Eagles on Saturday. Because if you beat them, with Jalen Hurts going to be out for a couple of games, they could have conceivably won the division with a little help. And now I think that's out of reach at this point. But and I don't think that coaches today, at least some probably don't, at least you don't see it in the players. They don't talk about it. What it means, especially in the second half of the season, to get into the playoffs and why playing well matters. I don't see it. I don't think guys understand what it means, because it doesn't matter really what you do in the regular season. You want to get to the playoffs and be playing at a much higher level. You remember the year the Patriots were undefeated throughout the regular season?
Yeah.
They win the divisional round. They win the championship game, and then lose to the Giants in the Super Bowl. How do you measure that season? A failure, really.
Yeah. No, you're right. Well, here's the thing. There's only one team that's going to win.
Right.
But with that said, there's a way you lose that probably sticks with you more than the way you win. And for that Patriot team, which in my opinion might have been not because of the record, but they were stacked, man. They were solid defensively. They had Randy Moss. He and Tom Brady got on the right page at the right time. I mean, they checked a whole lot of boxes. And if you think about the one catch, the one receiver made with his helmet, I mean, life could have changed, for everybody. I mean, it was one of those games, but those guys will always have a bad taste in their mouth about the one that got away. Much like I'm sure Rams players feel like when they got knocked off by the Patriots, that was a better team than the one that won the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So, but you're right. It's about getting in and going as deep as you can. But here's the other thing that goes with that. Because we have so many, what I would deem young teams, teams that don't have a lot of postseason experience, how important is it for you to have a guy who's been there from a postseason standpoint, not to mention coaches? Remember, a lot of these coaches are getting hired very young. They don't have that postseason ring experience that you would hope for them to have as far as organization and dedication to detail. How important is it to have both of those when you go into postseason?
Extremely important, because it's a different season. It truly is. I learned that my rookie year. I remember we won the division. I think we were 12-4, and I remember practicing before the divisional round. I want to say we beat Tampa Bay, but anyway, Butch Johnson comes out in practice on offensive day, and on the back of his practice pants, we wore white practice pants. On the back of his practice pants, he wrote $2 signs, one on each butt cheek. So this shows up in film sessions. And of course, as players, you knew what it meant. He was really saying, "Hey guys, this is the time to step it up." Because at the time, playoff money for a lot of guys meant more than what they were earning salary, or certainly could almost equal it if you were able to make a run. But Coach Landry, he was not happy. And trust me when I tell you, the next day, Butch did not have on the same pants.
It was suggested to him.
Yeah, it was. But Butch was making a point. And I mean, we got that point clearly. This is a new season. And if you want, we want to win, you want to win that money too, because that money is important. This is where you've got to step it up. And the coaches, certainly the Cowboys coaches understood it. I mean, because many of them had been there, not just as coaches, but also players themselves. So it was the emphasis was there. I learned it. I'm glad that I learned it early on.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you this: the worst part about it, playing in 2 back-to-back NFC Championship games and losing, especially the second game. I remember after we lost to the 49ers, the game known as the catch with Montana to Dwight Clark. I thought, wow, we had a good team. We lost this game, but I think we can get
We'll
back.
be back.
To
Yeah.
next year. So you get back to that point the next year, lose to the Redskins, and now my thinking is, well, we had a good team. We got here, but damn, I don't know. I mean, the hard work it took to get back. Can we get back here again?
Yeah.
And we never did. I mean, we got in the playoffs, but never reached the championship game.
Yeah.
And that sticks with me at 63 years old. That I was that close to playing in the Super Bowl, and we didn't make it.
I'll tell you a great story about playoff money. You may have heard this story about Deacon Jones. You remember how they used to go back and forth with the Vikings, and this one year the Rams are loaded. I mean, fearsome force. They had everything you needed to get all the way. And they lose to Minnesota early in the playoffs. And Deacon is sitting on his stool crying like a baby. I mean, he cannot control himself. So guys are going, hey, Deke, don't worry about it, man. We'll get him next year. Come on, man. Trying to console him. And so he kept crying. So one guy said, man, is there something else to this? He said, yeah. He said, I was so confident that we were going to win. I had my wife go out and buy a nice fur coat. And I was going to take the playoff money and pay for it with it. Now I don't have it. That's the reason why I'm crying. It's not because we lost to the Vikings.
I got to figure out a way to pay for that coat.
Pay for this coat now.
I wonder if she kept the coat. I wonder if she kept the coat.
She might, he might have done her like they did in Goodfellas when she walked in the restaurant and he took the coat. Take it back. Get it out of here. I don't want it here. Let's take a first break. It's Huddle Up with Howard on ClaimsOnline.com.
Honey, what are you doing up?
I'm too excited to sleep.
Have you tried counting sheep?
Yeah, but it didn't work.
Have you tried counting Albert Pujols home runs?
But there's so many.
Let's just give it a try, okay?
Okay.
Good night.
1 Albert Pujols home run. 2 Albert Pujols home runs. 3 Albert Pujols home runs. 4 Albert Pujols home runs.
There's always been a bright side to living in downstate Illinois. Ameren, Illinois is making it even brighter with a little help from the sun. Right now, we're building a next-generation solar facility to bring you cleaner energy for generations to come. It's good for the environment, your neighborhood, and everyone living in downstate Illinois. That's brighter thinking. That's energy at work. Learn how you can participate in solar programs at amerenillinois.com/renewables.
Welcome back. It's Huddle Up with Howard Richardson as we continue to talk a little bit about the NFL. Philadelphia has certainly distinguished themselves in the NFC. The AFC is a little bit of a different story. Kansas City and Buffalo are the cream of the crop, but there's some other teams that are trying to find their way. And you said it earlier, there's a lot of parity, and which makes the first round of the playoffs this year quite interesting. And I don't even know who those teams are going to be.
No, behind Kansas City and Cincinnati, you got, Tennessee, Baltimore, Chargers, and the Dolphins. They range from 11 wins down to, I think, 7 wins or 8 wins or something like that, all bunched together. But again, throw the records out because those cross-country games that may end up happening depending on how this thing plays out, I think will be the equalizer. You remember, not that I always want to go back to the time that I played, but 1981, when the Chargers, who had all the weapons in the world, Dan Fouts, John Jefferson, Kellen Winslow, Wes Chandler, when they went to Cincinnati, no one thought that the Bengals would beat the Chargers. But, it was like 13 degrees below zero. It was crazy cold there. And, of course, Cincinnati prevailed playing at home. So those are the things that I think you really have to account for. Now, one surprise last weekend, I was surprised that Miami played as well as they did up in Buffalo.
Yeah, yeah.
I looked at the score late in the game and saw that it was tied. And I think, Buffalo's probably lucky to get away with a win. So maybe Miami is not intimidated by the cold. Maybe they just have that other gear that says, regardless of the adverse situations, we're going to go and play our best and try to steal one whenever we can.
While we are so enamored with the passing game today, and rightfully so, I mean, we've got some great receivers, some great passers. Man, I'm looking at teams who have a legitimate running game. Because when it gets cold and you can't make those catches and you can't do certain things, if you don't have a running game, you're going to have a problem. And I'm looking around, who do you think? And Philadelphia has a they have a very good offensive line. They can do anything they want to. But who else do you think has enough of a running game to offset the defense when they think that they can just sit back and play the pass?
Well, I think the Chiefs have made those moves better than adequate guys that can run the ball. And I think Andy Reid slowly and reluctantly realized that over the years. But I think each year he's trying to find that, not necessarily a marquee back, but a guy that can carry the rock and get those tough yards when they need it. Because Mahomes will do it. He'll tuck it and run it, but you don't want him running the ball this time of year.
No.
Give it to a guy that's dependable, who's not going to turn the ball over. And that's the most critical thing. You start turning the ball in the playoffs,
it's a wrap.
We'll take a seat on the couch.
Exactly. Yeah, we're done. All right, let's change.
I was just going to ask just one thing, though. And I would not necessarily underestimate Tennessee because of one guy, Derrick Henry.
Here's why I would underestimate him, Ryan Tannehill.
Well,
so it's a balance there. San Francisco probably is a team that checks the most boxes with regard to a well-rounded offense with everything they've shown so far. So I say beware of them as well. Let's talk some college football. Missouri Tigers are going to face off against a team that they've never faced before in Wake Forest. What do you know about them that we don't know?
Well, I can tell you that the quarterback for Wake Forest, Sam Hartman, is the guy that scares me a little bit. He's thrown 11 interceptions, which, that averages out to about one a game, just slightly under one a game. But he's also thrown, I think, 35 TD passes. So they've got a tremendous air game. Their running back, Justice Ellison, I think his numbers are almost exactly comparable to what Cody Schrader has done. So they can run the ball when they need to run the ball. But it's going to be challenging for the Missouri's defense. And I say that because even though you've got guys like Ennis Rakestraw and Chris Abrams-Drain who've announced that they're coming back for next year and they will play in the bowl game, guys that won't play in the bowl game, or three guys that have announced that they are declaring for the NFL draft. So this Martez Manuel, starting strong safety, who's an all SEC caliber player, whose best football, I think, is ahead of him. Isaiah McGuire at one defensive end and DJ Coleman at the other defensive end. Those two guys, Coleman and McGuire, played a big role in the defense, the pressure that they were able to get against teams. That said, Johnny Walker and Arden Walker are two guys that, along with Trajan Jeffcoat, or guys that can still rush the passer. Now, the Walker guys, even though they don't have a ton of experience, are probably faster and quicker than Coleman and McGuire. So to be able to turn them loose and see what they're going to be able to do in the bowl game will be exciting. But otherwise, everyone else on defense, I think, is going to be there. But again, the challenge, you got to be able to contain this quarterback who just loves to throw the ball all over the place. So the Missouri's defense is going to have to get it done. And the offense is going to have to, they're going to have to step it up. The things that they've struggled with all year, just not being consistent, playing behind the chains, not great on first and second downs, and not horrible in the red zone, but not as good as they need to be. And then the line play, how consistent can the offensive line be in this bowl game? So that's really what it's going to come down to. Otherwise, these teams are relatively evenly matched. The records are, Wake Forest has won one more game. They're 7-5. Missouri is 6-6. But I think it could be an interesting matchup. Could be one of the more exciting games and probably the only game that day on Friday night.
Well, you know what? Those matchups are fun. You know, you look at the records. Neither team knows a lot about the other than what they see on film. I'm looking forward to be entertaining. Now, the other thing, you touched on something earlier about guys who've elected to pass on playing the game. What does it say about Alabama, where Nick Saban says everybody's going to play, everybody's coming back, nobody's skipping out? They finish. I guess they feel like as a unit, as a team, they have some unfinished business. And when they go out and play the last game for guys like Bryce Young and some other good players,
Will Anderson.
They're going to go out on a high note. But I think it says a lot about the makeup and the character and the organization of that program, about their commitment. It's the team first, and the rest of it will take care of itself.
I agree. And if you had told me to pick two players that likely would not play in a bowl game, especially with it not being the college football playoff, I would have gone straight to Tuscaloosa and said, Bryce Young and Will Anderson. And Will Anderson, probably the best defensive player in college football the last 2 seasons. They've both announced that they're going to play in the bowl game. So, I applaud them both.
Yeah.
Why? Because you mentioned the unfinished business, but also I think they feel like they have a duty to their team. They're not really doing it for themselves.
No, because they're getting paid.
They will get paid. Absolutely. So I love that. It wasn't really an option back then when I was playing, but I played in our bowl game. Then I played in the Hula Bowl and the Senior Bowl, and worked out for teams leading up to the NFL draft. For me, I think it answered a few questions, but solidified what people thought about me as a first-round pick. So that was important to me, because with all the talk leading up to it, it would have been disappointing had I not been drafted in round 1. But listen, I think the decision I made, or just the fact that I never would have even made that decision to not play with my teammates, is what I think I'm happiest about. And I think Alabama players and their whole program, I think are probably a little bit more proud because those guys are going to play. They're going to finish what they started when they decided to sign with the Crimson Tide.
I don't even know who they're playing in that game. Whoever it is, going to have a problem.
Yeah, no doubt.
They're going to have a problem. Is there one game aside from the championship game that you're going to pay attention to because of the matchup?
What's Michigan going to do?
Yeah, a lot of people are saying that. What is Michigan going to do? Okay, they impressed everybody by going in and destroying Ohio State. But, for the most part, they ran the table, did a great job, but they just didn't seem like they were that juggernaut that you just say, we got to play Michigan. Offensive line is playing well. I give them credit for that. Their best runner is 50-50 on whether he's going to come back and play. But overall, they're just a team that you say, yeah, I know their record says this, but I'm not really sure about them.
Well, and listen, they don't do it in a sexy way, do they?
No.
What we talked about earlier, they're going to run the ball.
Yeah.
That's what Harbaugh is going to do. And that actually, they may be the team that kind of sleeps through it all, because he's pretty much an old school quarterback. He knows the formula that works. He knows when it comes down to with the game being on the line, you got to be able to get the ball across the goal line. And oftentimes it's done by running the football. I mean, you see teams that are throwing the ball on first or second down, 2 yards, 3 yards out. What is that? Give it to these guys that you coach up all year long to be tough and physical and hitting the hole. What are all those drills that you do in practice just to throw the football? Run the doggone football. Get it into the end zone the old-fashioned way, the way the game was meant to be played. Of course, I'm biased.
Yeah, but rightfully so. But I'm going to tell you something. You know what I think it also comes from? I think they have to go back to teaching the offensive lineman how to block on the run. Not push, not, as they like to say, influence. Put a guy on his ass. drive a guy off the line of scrimmage. You know, back in the day, it was a time you knew it was a good block if you could block a guy to the TV screen. If you didn't see him, then you knew you were doing your job. We don't teach that anymore. It's grabbing, it's holding, it's influencing. No, put a shoulder on a guy, stay low, and block. And I don't think they teach that enough.
They don't. And you know, I see football a lot. Less so at the NFL level about fundamentals, but at the collegiate level, usually when something breaks down on the offensive line, it all goes back to footwork.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually bad footwork. When guys are able to get penetration along the line of scrimmage and blow up plays, it's almost always a guy's footwork was poor. You didn't take that hard inside step to cut off from the backside. You got to anticipate these types of things. And, you know, those are the fundamentals to me. If you have those, if you are secure in your fundamentals of blocking and footwork, you're going to win 80 to 90% of the time without really even trying, because it's ingrained into you. It's automatic. You don't even have to think about it.
Yep.
And I don't see it. I just see bad fundamentals all the time. It drives me insane.
I can name the good ones on one hand in this game, and I think really know what they're doing. The guy in San Francisco, Williams, he knows what he's doing. And there's a couple of other ones that kind of, you know, you can see that, A, they have good footwork, and B, they don't mind putting a body on somebody. But the rest of them, and I know they got to have a Pro Bowl, and they're going to put some guys on that team. But I got news for you. You give me some guys who played 5 or 8 years ago as defensive linemen, they would make mincemeat out of these guys. And that's just where the game is. I think we spent too much time, and as much time as these coaches work on coaching up players, at least some of them do, I don't think they spend enough time on the fundamentals of how to block and establish a legitimate running game. And because that'll get you in the league as well as anybody.
Yeah, absolutely. When your quarterback gets in the huddle and say, guys, I need a little more time, because if we can get the time, I can make this play downfield. And you just don't see guys holding their blocks. I mean, when my quarterback says, not that you weren't blocking before, but it means more when he says, I just need another second to get this ball off. So you got to go from deep within to make sure at whatever cost you get that guy in front of you block. I don't care if it's Lawrence Taylor or you know, Lawrence Brown. you got to get him blocked.
Yeah, and you know, the same thing applies on the running game. You know, hey, the only thing I'm gonna ask the back is to hit the hole. Don't dance, hit the hole, and it'll be up to me to get this guy out of the way to give you just enough space to get through there. All right, Howard, we're out of time. Good luck this weekend. Have some fun in Florida for the brief time you're there. And next week we'll have a chance to talk about Mizzou and where they go from here, because the recruiting signing date will be behind us, and we'll have a chance to discuss that as well, along with the upcoming bowl games.
Sounds good, man. Have a great week.
Right.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you as well, sir. He's Howard Richards. I'm Mike Claiborne. Another edition of Huddle Up with Howard has taken place. We look forward to talking to you next week right here on ClaibsOnline.com.